afternoon or good morning. Thanks for attending Minimizing the Impact of Dirty Data in Pharmacovigilance. Wanted to start by explaining why this topic was chosen and why it's important to me. I started my career in industry, as Andrew said, in a call center in 2005 where I was a consultant veterinarian. Prior to being allowed to answer my first phone call, I actually, trying to get my webinar to work here. Apologize for that. Prior to being allowed to answer my first phone call, as I was saying, I was sent through thorough training on call handling skills, interview techniques, angry caller management, all sorts of call center training. But I never really received any training on drug safety or regulatory requirements. And I truly enjoyed my time at the call center, but after several years, I decided to expand my understanding of veterinary pharmacovigilance and then decided to make the move into drug safety. It was at that point that I truly realized how much I hadn't been taught about the processing of adverse events. Now, I'd taken them a lot, but I wasn't sure and only had a vague idea of what happened to that information after it left me. That was the opportunity that I needed. When I got here and I saw how much I didn't know, I really wanted to address the challenges that I saw in the process. So in this webinar, we'll talk about how to better manage the data collection process for adverse events and product quality complaints. We'll discuss solutions for correcting inconsistent practices and applying VEDRA codes. And I'll go over ways to harmonize the sometimes perplexing task of trying to assign causality assessments to case safety reports. Here is our agenda for the day. Excuse me. I'll define what dirty data is and talk a little about its downstream impact. Next, I'll give a brief overview of the adverse event process, and then I'll discuss areas that I think are of particular concern when it comes to the risks of dirty data. Then I'll cover some general recommendations for minimizing the possibilities of dirty data, and last, I'll talk specifically about ways to manage the particularly risky areas. Well, let's start by saying what is dirty data, or trying to determine what is dirty data. Excuse me. I consider dirty data a 21st century word, and it simply is data that is inaccurate or incomplete, erroneous, or anything along those lines, especially in a computer system or safety database. In other words, just data that contains errors. Unclean data can even be incorrect data as it relates to certain fields, such as words in a numeric field, or it's data that contains spelling or punctuation errors, or even duplicate data, or data not even allowed in the database. For instance, in researching some of this information, I found that the CVM guidance for industry says that no special symbols should be allowed in free text fields for electronic submissions, and those symbols are what you see at the bottom of the screen here. So what's the impact of dirty data? That's the real important question. Well, it not only impacts the accurate assessment of individual case safety reports, but it also leads to inaccurate assessment concerning the effectiveness or risks of the veterinary product in question. It creates delays in detections of safety signals, and that jeopardizes the safety of our patients. Additionally, organizations can incur significant costs and time expenditures associated with trying to clean up or to convert bad data. And ultimately, this corrupted data can lead to risk of regulatory action, such as requiring label changes, design, packaging, or distribution changes. It could result in safety alerts being issued and even product recalls. Then, marketing authorization holders would have to do repeat studies to demonstrate the product's safety and efficacy, which ultimately cost millions. So now the question becomes, how do you mitigate these potentially disastrous effects? First, let's review at a high level the spontaneous adverse event processing, which I would say is a fairly standard process. The event information comes from any number of sources, such as consumers, veterinarians, or regulatory authorities even, and it's collected by a company representative. Then the data is entered, coded, evaluated, and reported. This data is not just used for reporting of individual case safety reports, though. It's used in many downstream processes, such as aggregate report preparation, signal detection and trending activities, development of profiles and product labeling information, and it's even fed back into our R&D and marketing activities. Clearly, in order to minimize the effects of dirty data, it's imperative that all individuals involved in the process of adverse event processing should be educated on the same training, quality and compliance guidelines, SOPs, and working practices. So obviously there's many steps or many sources of dirty data as there are steps in the process or fields in a database.